Captain Valterra pressed her face against the cold metal of the command console. Her hands shook as she watched the enemy ships move closer to her homeworld. The Korvac Empire had come with more ships than anyone had ever seen. 200 massive war vessels hung in space like dark metal moons. Each one was bigger than the largest city on Zephyria. The battle was already over. Captain Valterra knew this, but could not say it out loud. Her crew still believed they had a chance. They still fired their weapons at the enemy ships. Blue beams of energy shot out from their small defense fleet and hit the Korvac vessels. But the enemy shields glowed for just a moment and then went back to normal. Their weapons did nothing. One by one, Valterra watched her ships die. The Korvac weapons were different from anything she had seen before. They did not fire energy beams or missiles. Instead, they shot streams of burning plasma that cut through ship hulls like hot knives through ice. When a Zephyrian ship was hit, it simply broke apart and turned into floating pieces of metal and fire. The communication officer turned to look at her. His face was pale with fear. "Captain, we just lost the Starlight and the Dawn Runner. It leaves only 12 ships in our defense fleet. 12 ships against 200. The numbers made her stomach hurt. Korvac had been conquering worlds for over 50 years. No one had ever been able to stop them. They took what they wanted and destroyed anyone who tried to fight back. They had no mercy for women or children. They had no mercy for anyone. Captain called out the weapons officer. "We have no effect on their shields. Our weapons are not strong enough." Valterra closed her eyes. She had known this moment would come ever since the Korvac Empire had started moving toward their system 3 months ago. The Zephyrian Republic was a peaceful alliance of 7 worlds. They had good trade relations with many other species in the galaxy. They built schools and hospitals and art museums. They did not build weapons of war. The Korvac Empire was different. They lived for war. Their whole society was built around conquering other worlds and taking their resources. They had the biggest ships and the most powerful weapons in the known galaxy. Every species feared them. Every species except the ones that were already dead. Another explosion lit up the view screen. The Zephyrian ship called New Hope had just been destroyed. Captain Valterra could see the escape pods launching from the burning wreckage. At least some of the crew might survive. But survive for what? The Korvac did not take prisoners. They took slaves. "Captain, incoming message from the enemy fleet," said the communication officer. "Put it on screen." The view screen changed to show the face of Warlord Dexkar. He was the leader of this Korvac attack force. Skin was dark gray and covered with scars from old battles. His eyes were small and black like pieces of coal. When he smiled, his teeth looked like the teeth of a shark. "Captain of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet," Warlord Dexkar said in his deep, rough voice, "your resistance is pointless. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick. Continue to fight, and we will make your people suffer for days before we allow them to die." Captain Valterra stood up straight. Even though she was afraid, she would not let this monster see her fear. "We will never surrender to you, Dexkar. The Zephyrian people are free and will always be free." The warlord laughed. The sound was like rocks grinding together. "Freedom is an illusion, Captain. Power is the only truth in this universe, and we have all the power here." The screen went black. A moment later, the enemy fleet began moving toward the planet again. Captain Valterra knew they were going to start bombing the cities soon. Millions of innocent people would die. Her own family lived in the capital city. Her husband worked as a teacher at the university. Her 2 daughters were still in school. They had never hurt anyone in their lives. "Captain, what are your orders?" asked her first officer. She looked around the bridge at her crew. These were good people. They had joined the defense fleet to protect their families and their way of life. They deserved better than this. Everyone on her world deserved better than this, but there was nothing more she could do. Her remaining ships could not stop the Korvac fleet. No one could stop them. The galaxy was full of advanced civilizations with powerful technology, but none of them were willing to fight the Korvac Empire. They were too afraid. They would rather let the Zephyrian Republic die than risk their own worlds. Captain Valterra made a decision that surprised even herself. She walked to the communication console and pushed the emergency broadcast button. This would send her message on all frequencies to every world in the galaxy that had the ability to receive it. "This is Captain Veltara of the Zephyrian Republic Defense Fleet," she said into the microphone. "Our worlds are under attack by the Korvac Empire. Our people are dying. We have done nothing to deserve this fate. We are a peaceful people who only want to live our lives in freedom." She paused and looked out at the enemy fleet. They were so close now that she could see the weapon ports opening on their massive ships. Soon those weapons would turn toward her homeworld and begin the destruction of everything she loved. "If anyone can hear this message, we are located in the Kepler 442 system. We have women and children here. We have old people and young people who have never seen war. They do not deserve to die because of the cruelty of others. Please, if there is anyone out there who has the power to help us, we beg you to come. We beg you to save our people." She turned off the transmitter and sat back down in her captain's chair. Her crew looked at her with sad eyes. They all knew that no one would come. The galaxy was too afraid of the Korvac Empire. They would listen to her message and feel sorry for the Zephyrian people, but they would not risk their own lives to save strangers. The message traveled through space at the speed of light, reaching world after world. On most planets, government leaders heard the plea and turned away. They had their own people to protect. Could not afford to make enemies of the Korvac Empire. But the message kept traveling, moving farther and farther from the Kepler 442 system. It passed through regions of space controlled by ancient civilizations that had forgotten what war really meant. It passed by worlds where peace had lasted. So long that most people thought violence was just something that happened in old history books. Finally, after crossing vast distances of empty space, the message reached a small blue planet in an unremarkable star system. The people of this world had only recently learned how to travel faster than light. Most galactic civilizations considered them to be primitive and unimportant. They had no great technology or vast resources. They were not feared by anyone, but they were listening. And they were about to prove that the galaxy had made a very serious mistake in ignoring them. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Luna Station, Earth's newest military base built on the moon. The room was filled with glowing screens and busy officers working at their stations, but right now, everyone was quiet. They were all listening to the same message for the 5th time. The voice of Captain Veltara came through the speakers again. Her words were full of pain and fear. She was begging for help. She was asking anyone in the galaxy to save her people from the Korvac Empire. The message had reached Earth 3 hours ago, and Admiral Chen had been thinking about it ever since. "Play it again," she said to the communication officer. "Admiral, we have heard it many times already," said General Morrison, the head of Earth's ground forces. He was an old soldier with gray hair and tired eyes. "We all know what she is asking for." "I know what she is asking for," Admiral Chen replied. "The question is what we are going to do about it." The other military leaders in the room looked at each other with worried faces. Earth had only discovered faster than light travel 30 years ago. Before that, humans had been trapped in their own solar system. They had spent most of their history fighting wars against each other on their home planet. When humans finally reached other star systems, they found a galaxy full of alien civilizations. Most of these aliens were more advanced than Earth. They had better technology and bigger space fleets. They treated humans like children who had just learned to walk, Admiral said Colonel Martinez from the Space Force. "We have 47 ships scattered across our colonies. That is our entire deep space fleet. The intelligence reports say the Korvac have over 200 ships attacking the Zephyrian system." "The numbers are not good," agreed General Morrison. "And we do not know anything about Korvac weapons or tactics. We have never fought them before." Admiral Chen walked to the large window that looked out at Earth. The blue planet hung in space like a beautiful jewel. It looked so peaceful from here, but Chen knew that Earth had not always been peaceful. Humans had spent thousands of years learning how to fight wars. They had learned from every battle, every defeat, every victory. "General Morrison is right," she said without turning around. "We have never fought the Korvac before." "Never fought us either." The room stayed quiet. Everyone was thinking about what the Admiral meant. Earth was still considered a young species by galactic standards. Most aliens thought humans were too primitive to be dangerous. They thought human technology was too simple and human tactics were too basic. "Admiral," said Captain Rivera from the intelligence department, "the Korvac Empire has conquered dozens of star systems. They have never been defeated in battle. Every species in the galaxy is afraid of them. Why should we be different?" "Admiral." Chen turned around to face her officers. Her eyes were hard and determined. "Because we are different, Captain Rivera. You're very different." She walked to the center of the room and activated the holographic display. A three-dimensional map of local space appeared in the air above them. The Kepler 442 system was marked. In red, Earth was marked in blue. The distance between them was vast, but not impossible to cross. The Korvac Empire has been successful because they fight civilizations that have forgotten what war really means. Admiral Chen said, "Most galactic species have lived in peace for hundreds or thousands of years. They build beautiful ships and powerful energy weapons, but they do not understand the true nature of combat." She pointed at Earth on the display. "We are different. We have been fighting wars for our entire history. We fought with sticks and stones. We fought with swords and arrows. We fought with guns and bombs and nuclear weapons. We have never stopped learning how to kill our enemies." The officers in the room were starting to understand what their admiral was thinking. Humans had a reputation in the galaxy for being violent and aggressive. Other species thought this made them primitive, but maybe it made them something else. "Entirely? What are you suggesting, Admiral?" asked General Morrison. "I am suggesting that we show the galaxy what human warfare really looks like," she replied. "The Korvac think they are the masters of war because they have big ships and powerful weapons. But war is not just about technology. War is about will. War is about determination. War is about being willing to do whatever it takes to win." She touched a control on the holographic display. The map changed to show the locations of all human military ships. They were spread out across a dozen star systems, protecting human colonies and trade routes. "Signal all ship commanders," Admiral Chen ordered. "I want every available vessel to rendezvous at the staging area near Proxima Centauri. We are going to respond to the Zephyrian distress call." "All ships, Admiral?" asked Colonel Martinez. "That will leave our colonies undefended." "Our colonies will be fine for a few days," she replied. "But if we do not stop the Korvac now, they will eventually come for us anyway. Better to fight them on our terms than to wait for them to choose the time and place." The communication officer looked up from his station. "Admiral, I have Captain Jackson of the battleship Yamamoto on the line. He wants to know if we have official authorization for this mission." Admiral Chen smiled for the first time that day. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a predator who had found prey.
Tell Captain Jackson that I am giving him authorization."
"Right now, tell him we are going to rescue the Zephyrians. And tell him to prepare for combat operations." Over the next 6 hours, human ships from across local space began moving toward the rendezvous point. These were not the elegant, graceful vessels that other galactic civilizations preferred. Human ships were built for war. They were angular and armored. They looked like the weapons they were designed to be. The flagship of the human fleet was the UES Yamamoto, a massive battleship named after an ancient Earth admiral. Its hull was dark gray metal covered with weapon ports and sensor arrays. It did not look beautiful or impressive. It looked dangerous. As the human fleet assembled, Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Yamamoto and watched the other ships take their positions. 47 vessels in total, destroyers and cruisers and carriers, each one crewed by humans who had volunteered for this mission. "Admiral," said the ship's captain, "we are receiving the final ship reports. All vessels are ready for Jump 2. Hyperspace." Admiral Chen nodded. She opened a communication channel to the entire fleet. "This is Admiral Chen, to all ships," she said. "We are about to jump to the Kepler 442 system to respond to a distress call from the Zephyrian Republic. The enemy we will face is supposed to be the most powerful military force in the galaxy. They have bigger ships and more advanced weapons than we do." She paused and looked around the bridge at her crew. They were all young men and women who had never seen real combat. But their eyes showed no fear, only determination. The Korvac Empire thinks they understand war, she continued. They are about to learn that they know nothing about war. They are about to meet the species that invented war. Prepare for jump. The human fleet engaged their hyperspace drives and disappeared from normal space. They were heading toward a battle that would change the galaxy forever. Behind them, Earth continued to orbit peacefully around its yellow star, looking as harmless as it always had. The galaxy was about to discover that appearances could be very deceiving. The human fleet appeared at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, like ghosts becoming real. One moment there was empty space, and the next moment 47 warships hung in the darkness between the stars. Their hulls were dark and angular, nothing like the smooth, curved ships that most galactic civilizations built. On every sensor screen in the system, new contacts suddenly appeared. The Korvac fleet detected them first. 200 massive dreadnoughts immediately turned their weapons toward these newcomers. On the surface of Zephyria, billions of people looked up at their screens and held their breath. Someone had actually come. Someone had answered their call for help. Warlord Dexcar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Conqueror. He was staring at the tactical display with confusion and growing anger. His intelligence officers were running around their stations trying to understand what they were seeing. Report, he growled in his deep, harsh voice. Sir, we count 47 vessels of unknown design, said his sensor officer. They appeared without warning at maximum sensor range. We had no advanced detection. Impossible, Dexcar said. Our sensors can detect ship movements 3 star systems away. How did they get so close without being seen? The sensor officer looked nervous. Unknown, sir. Their ships use technology we do not recognize. Their energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. Warlord Dexcar studied the display more carefully. Human ships were much smaller than his dreadnoughts. His smallest ship was 3 times bigger than their largest vessel, but something about them made him feel uneasy. They did not look like ships built for exploration or trade. They looked like weapons. Open a communication channel, he ordered. Main screen lit up to show Admiral Chen standing on the bridge of the Yamamoto. She was a small woman with short black hair and calm eyes. She wore a simple military uniform with no decorations or fancy medals. To Warlord Dexcar, she looked completely ordinary. Unknown vessels, Dexcar said in his most threatening voice. You are interfering in Korvac Imperial business. Your primitive ships are outnumbered 4-1. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. Admiral Chen looked at him for a long moment without speaking. Her face showed no fear, no anger, no emotion at all. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet and steady. Warlord Dexcar, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. You are hereby ordered to cease hostilities against the Zephyrian Republic and withdraw your forces immediately. This is your only warning. The bridge of the Conqueror went completely silent. Every Korvac officer stared at the screen in shock. No one had ever spoken to Warlord Dexcar like that. No one had ever given him orders. No one had ever threatened. The mighty Korvac Empire? Then the laughter started. First from Dexcar himself, then from his officers, then from crew members throughout the ship. The sound was heard on every Korvac vessel in the fleet. It was the sound of predators who had found prey so weak that it was almost insulting. Foolish humans, Dexcar said when he finally stopped laughing. You know nothing of war. Your species crawled out of its cave just a few years ago. We have been conquering worlds since before your civilization learned to make fire. Which is? We demonstrate true power. Admiral Chen's expression did not change. You have been warned, Warlord. What happens next is your choice. The communication ended. On the bridge of the Yamamoto, Admiral Chen turned to her tactical officer. Analysis of the enemy fleet? 212 vessels, Admiral? All dreadnought class? Each ship is approximately 8 kilometers long and mounts heavy plasma cannon arrays. Their shields appear to be standard galactic technology, probably class 7 or 8. Crew complements? It's estimated at 15,000 per ship, Admiral. Total enemy personnel approximately 3 million. Admiral Chen nodded. She had fought against worse odds during the Titan Rebellion. It's not in space, but the principles were the same. The enemy had bigger weapons and more soldiers, but they also had more to lose. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "Battle formation Delta 7. Prepare for combat." The human fleet began to move. The ships spread out into a formation that looked random to the Korvac observers. But every human captain knew exactly where they were supposed to be. They had practiced this formation hundreds of times in simulators and training exercises. On the surface of Zephyria, Captain Veltara watched the tactical display with growing horror. The human ships were so small compared to the Korvac dreadnoughts. Even with her limited military knowledge, she could see that this was going to be a massacre. The humans were brave to come here, but bravery would not be enough against the most powerful war fleet in the galaxy. "Captain," said her communication officer, "we are receiving a message from the human fleet." "Put it through." Admiral Chen's face appeared on their screen again. "Captain Veltara, this is Admiral Chen. We have received your distress call. I want you to move your remaining ships to the far side of the planet and stay there until we signal you. Do not interfere with the battle, no matter what happens." Admiral Chen Veltara said, "You do not understand. The Korvac Empire has the most powerful military in the galaxy. They have never been defeated. Your ships are too small to fight them." "Captain Veltara," Admiral Chen replied, "you do not understand. We are not here to fight the Korvac Empire. We are here to destroy it." The transmission ended before Veltara could respond. She stared at the blank screen and wondered if the humans were insane or if they knew something that the rest of the galaxy did not. Back in space, the Korvac fleet was moving into attack formation. Their massive dreadnoughts arranged themselves in a wall of metal and weapons that stretched across thousands of kilometers. Each ship was a fortress capable of destroying entire cities. Together, they represented the accumulated military might of an empire that had conquered half the galaxy. Warlord Dexkar stood on his bridge and watched the human ships approach. They were accelerating directly toward his fleet with no attempt to use evasive maneuvers. They were not even raising their shields. It was the most suicidal attack he had ever seen. "Weapons range in 30 seconds, reported his tactical officer. "All ships prepare to fire," Dexkar ordered. "Act. Target their largest vessels first. We will show the galaxy what happens to those who challenge the Korvac Empire." The human fleet continued its approach. From a distance, the 47 ships looked like insects flying toward a wall of giants. Every sensor in the system was focused on them. Every person on Zephyria was watching their screens. This moment would be remembered forever, though not in the way that Warlord Dexkar expected. "Sir," said the sensor officer, suddenly, "something is wrong with their ships." "What do you mean?" Dexkar demanded. "They're not showing standard energy signatures. Their power readings are ... unusual. And sir, they appear to be accelerating far beyond normal limits." Dexkar looked at his tactical display more carefully. The human ships were indeed moving faster than should be possible for vessels of their size, and their energy readings were completely different from anything he had seen before. "No matter," he said. "Speed will not save them from superior firepower. All ships, weapons range achieved. Open fire." The Korvac fleet unleashed its fury. Streams of superheated plasma shot out from 200 dreadnoughts, creating a deadly rainbow of destruction in the void of space. The combined firepower was enough to vaporize a moon. It was directed at 47 human ships that most of the galaxy considered to be primitive and outdated. The plasma streams reached their targets and struck the human fleet directly. The space around the human ships was filled with fire and energy. The sensors were blinded by the intensity of the explosions. When the energy finally faded and the sensors cleared, Warlord Dexkar expected to see nothing but debris and expanding clouds of gas. Instead, he saw 47 human ships, still intact, still approaching, and still accelerating. "Impossible," he whispered. "Sir," said his sensor officer in a shaking voice, "their shields absorbed the entire barrage. Energy readings suggest their defensive systems are far more advanced than anything in our databases." For the first time in his life, Warlord Dexkar felt something he had never experienced before. It It was a cold feeling in his stomach that made his hands shake and his mouth go dry. He did not recognize it because he had never felt it before. It was fear. All ships, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Continue firing. Maximum rate. Destroy those ships. But even as he gave the order, the X-Car was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. The humans had not come here to fight a hopeless battle. They'd come here because they knew something that the Krovak Empire was about to learn. They had come here to win. Admiral Chen stood calmly on the bridge of the Yamamoto as the Krovak plasma fire washed over her fleet like a deadly storm. The ship's shields glowed bright blue as they absorbed energy that would have destroyed any other vessel in the galaxy. Around her, the crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. No one seemed worried or afraid. Shield status? She asked, holding at 96%. Admiral, replied the defensive systems officer. The Korovac weapons are powerful, but they use old technology. Our quantum barriers can handle 10 times this energy output. Admiral Chen nodded. Humanity had learned long ago that the best defense was not to avoid being hit, but to make sure that being hit did not matter. While other species built faster ships to run away from danger, humans built stronger ships to run toward it. Signal all ships, she said in her calm voice. Execute attack pattern Alpha. Show them what human warfare looks like. The human fleet suddenly changed formation. Instead of staying together in a tight group, the ships spread out in all directions. They moved in ways that seemed impossible, turning and spinning and diving through space like fighters instead of warships. The Korvac had never seen anything like it. All ships, weapons free, Admiral Chen ordered. Target their largest vessels first. Let them see what real weapons can do. The UES Yamamoto fired its main gun. It was not an energy weapon like the plasma cannons that every other species used. It was something much simpler and much more deadly. A long metal rod made of tungsten was launched from the ship's magnetic rail, gun at 15% of the speed of light. The projectile crossed the distance. Between the fleets in less than 3 seconds, it struck the shields of a Krovac dreadnought and passed through them like they were not even there. The metal rod hit the ship's hull with the force of a nuclear bomb. The kinetic energy turned the tungsten into a stream of superheated plasma. That cut through 8 kilometers of armored metal in the blink of an eye. The Korvac dreadnought simply disappeared. One moment it was there. The next moment it was an expanding cloud of glowing gas and twisted metal. On the bridge of the Conqueror, Warlord Dexkar stared at his tactical display in shock. One of his most powerful ships had just been destroyed by a single shot from a vessel 1/3 its size. His sensor officers were working frantically to understand what had happened. "Report," he shouted. "Sir, the humans are using kinetic weapons," said his science officer. "They are firing solid projectiles at extreme velocity. Our shields are designed to stop energy weapons, not physical impacts at relativistic speeds." Dexkar felt his confidence beginning to crack. "Adapt shield frequencies. Stop those projectiles." "Sir, we cannot. The projectiles are moving too fast and hitting too hard. Physics will not allow our current shield technology to stop them." Before the Dexkar could respond, 3 more Krovac ships exploded. The human vessels were firing constantly now, their railguns sending streams of metal death across the battlefield. Each shot destroyed another dreadnought. Each shot proved that the Krovac Empire was not as invincible as they believed, but the humans were just getting started. The smaller ships in their fleet began launching missiles. These were not the guided energy torpedoes that most species used. These were fusion bombs wrapped in metal casings and fired from magnetic launchers. When they struck their targets, they exploded with the power of small stars. The human destroyer called Stalingrad flew directly at a group of 5 Krovac ships. Instead of firing its weapons, it simply rammed into the largest enemy vessel at half the speed of light. The collision released so much energy that both ships and everything around them for 1,000 kilometers was vaporized instantly. "Impossible," Dexkar screamed. "They are using their own ships as weapons." "What kind of madness is this?" His tactical officer was pale with fear. "Sir, we have lost 43 ships in the first 5 minutes of combat. The humans are using warfare tactics we have never encountered. They fight like they do not care if they die. Vixcar was beginning to understand something terrible. Humans did not fight like any civilized species. They fought like wild animals. They used their ships as clubs and their weapons as hammers. They turned physics itself into a weapon of war. Captain Valterra watched the battle from the safety of Zephyria's far side and could not believe what she was seeing. The human fleet was tearing through the mighty Kroivak armada like it was made of paper. Their ships moved with impossible speed and agility. Their weapons hit with devastating force. And most shocking of all, they seemed to have no fear of death. She watched a human cruiser called the Texas dive straight into the middle of 10 Krovac dreadnoughts. The ship's captain activated something called a nuclear self-destruct device. The explosion destroyed the cruiser and all 10 enemy ships around it. The human captain had killed himself and his crew to take out the enemy. No other species in the galaxy would even consider such a tactic. "What kind of people are these humans?" asked her science officer. Captain Valterra did not know how to answer. She was starting to realize that humanity was unlike any species the galaxy had ever encountered. They did not just fight wars. They had turned war itself into an art form. Back in the battle, Admiral Chen was coordinating her fleet's attack with the precision of a master craftsman. Every move was planned. Every shot was calculated. Every sacrifice was made for maximum effect. "Status report," she called out. "We have destroyed 96 enemy vessels, Admiral," reported her tactical officer. "We have lost 7 ships. Enemy is beginning to retreat." Admiral Chen looked at the tactical display. The remaining Krovac ships were indeed trying to pull back. Their tight formation was breaking apart as individual captains tried to save their own vessels. Fear was spreading through their ranks. "Like a disease, signal the retribution and the vengeance," she ordered. "Have them move to cut off the enemy retreat. I want the surviving ships to see what happens when they try to run from humanity." The 2 human battleships moved to block the Krovac escape route. They began firing antimatter warheads, weapons so powerful that each explosion created a brief artificial star. The Krovac ships that tried to flee were caught in the devastating blasts and simply ceased to exist. Warlord Vixcar realized that his empire's greatest fleet was being destroyed by a force less than 1/4 its size. The humans were not just winning, they were completely dominating the battle. His ships were dying so fast that his tactical officers could not keep count. "Sir," said his communication officer, "we are receiving surrender offers from our own captains. They want to abandon ship and ask for mercy." "No," Vixcar roared. "The Krovac Empire does not surrender. We fight until victory or death." But even as he spoke those words, he could see that victory was impossible. The humans had weapons and tactics that the galaxy had never seen before. They fought with a brutality and efficiency that made the Krovac Empire look weak and primitive. Another massive explosion lit up the view screen. The dreadnought destroyer had just been hit by something the humans called an antimatter torpedo. The ship did not just explode, it was completely converted into energy, creating a ball of fire that could be seen from the surface of Zephyria. "Yes, sir," whispered his tactical officer. "We have lost 150 ships. The humans have lost only 12. At this rate, our entire fleet will be destroyed in the next 10 minutes. Warlord Vixcar looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were all afraid. The mighty Krovac Empire, the terror of the galaxy, was being crushed by a species that most civilizations considered to be primitive barbarians. He was beginning to understand that the galaxy had been very, very wrong about humanity. "Sir," called out his sensor officer, "the human flagship is moving directly toward us. Admiral Chen is coming here." Vixcar straightened up in his command chair. If this was going to be the end of his empire, at least he would face it with dignity. He would show these humans that the Korvac knew how to die with honor. But as he watched the Yamamoto approach his ship, he realized that Admiral Chen might have something worse than death in mind for him. She might want him to live with the knowledge that his empire had been destroyed by a species the galaxy had dismissed as harmless children. The battle was almost over, and humanity had won in a way that would change the galaxy forever. Captain Veltara stared at her sensor displays and checked the readings 3 times. The numbers could not be real. 212 Krovac dreadnoughts had entered the system just hours ago. Now her sensors showed only floating debris and expanding clouds of superheated gas. The most feared fleet in the galaxy had been completely destroyed. The human fleet hung in space where the Korvac armada used to be. 35 ships remained out of the original 47. They had suffered damage, but they were still operational. Still dangerous. Still ready to fight if anyone else wanted to challenge them. "Captain," said her communication officer in a voice full of wonder, "we are receiving a message from Admiral Chen." "Put it on screen." Admiral Chen appeared on the main display. Her uniform was torn, and there was a small cut on her forehead, but her eyes were as calm as ever. Behind her, the bridge of the Yamamoto showed signs of battle damage, but the crew was working efficiently to repair their systems. "Captain Veltara, this is Admiral Chen," she said. "The Krovac threat has been eliminated. Your people are safe. We are beginning search and rescue operations for any survivors from both fleets." Veltara found it hard to speak. Her throat felt dry and her hands were shaking. "Admiral Chen, we cannot thank you enough. You saved our entire civilization." "How can we ever repay you?" "No payment is necessary, Captain," Admiral Chen replied. "We did what any decent people should do when they hear a cry for help. We answered the call." The transmission ended, but Captain Veltara continued to stare at the blank screen. Around her, the bridge crew was celebrating quietly. They were alive. Their families were alive. Their world would see another sunrise, because a species they had never heard of decided to risk everything to save them. But across the galaxy, the celebration was not shared by everyone. On dozens of worlds, government leaders and military commanders were watching the same sensor recordings with growing fear. The footage was spreading through diplomatic channels and intelligence. Networks faster than light-speed communication could carry it. In the council chambers of the Galactic Federation, emergency sessions were being called. Representatives from 100 different species gathered to discuss what they had witnessed. The chamber was filled with the sounds of clicking, chirping, and other alien languages as delegates tried to understand what had just happened. Order, order. Called the Federation President, an ancient being whose species had achieved interstellar travel when humans were still living in caves. "We are here to discuss the incident in the Kepler 442 system." "Incident," shouted the representative from the Altarian Confederacy. "This was not an incident. This was a massacre. The humans destroyed the entire Krovac fleet in less than 8 minutes. "The sensor data must be wrong," said another delegate. "No species could possess such military capability and remain undetected by our intelligence services." But the data was not wrong. Every monitoring station in that sector of space had recorded the battle. The evidence was undeniable. Humanity, the species that most galactic civilizations barely acknowledged, had just demonstrated military power beyond anything previously seen on Earth. President Martinez stood before the United Nations General Assembly. The Great Hall was packed with representatives from every human nation. The entire world was watching as their leader addressed the most important moment in human history. "My fellow humans," President Martinez began, "today we have announced ourselves to the galaxy, not as supplicants seeking acceptance, but as protectors of those who cannot protect themselves. Let this be a message to any who would prey upon the innocent. Earth is watching." The assembly erupted in cheers. Humans around the world celebrated in the streets. They had dreamed of being respected by the galactic community, but they had never imagined it would happen like this. They had not earned respect through diplomacy or trade or cultural exchange. They had earned it through the oldest and most universal language in the universe: superior. Firepower back in the Kepler 442 system. Human fleet was conducting rescue operations with the same efficiency they had shown in battle. Admiral Chen had ordered every human ship to search for survivors from both the Zephyrian and Korvac fleets. Even enemies deserved medical treatment and a chance to live. The rescued Korvac prisoners were shocked by this treatment. Their empire had taught them that the strong dominated the weak, and that mercy was a sign of weakness. But the humans who had just destroyed their fleet were now risking their own lives to save Korvac soldiers from damaged ships. One young Korvac officer was brought aboard the medical ship Mercy. He had been badly injured when his dreadnought was destroyed, but human doctors worked for hours to save his life. When he finally woke up, he found a human nurse checking his vital signs. "Why?" he asked in broken galactic standard language. "Why did you save me?" "I am your enemy," the nurse, a middle-aged woman from Earth's Pacific Federation, looked at him with kind eyes. "Because that is what decent people do," she said. "We fight when we must, but we always try to save lives when we can." The Korvac officer did not understand. In his empire, enemies were killed or enslaved. They were not healed and treated with kindness. He began to realize that humans were not just militarily superior to his people. They were morally superior as well. Meanwhile, communication requests were flooding into Earth's diplomatic channels. The Zephyrian Republic was offering humanity a permanent seat on the Galactic Council, not as junior members, but as senior partners. Other species were sending ambassadors with offers of alliance, trade agreements, and mutual defense treaties. Some messages were less friendly. Few aggressive species were issuing threats and challenges, claiming that humanity's victory was just luck and that they could defeat the human fleet in a fair fight. Admiral Chen read these messages with amusement and filed them away for future reference. But the most interesting messages came from the Korvac Empire itself. 17 different Korvac systems had sent surrender requests to Earth. They offered to release all prisoners, provide reparations to their victims, and dismantle their military forces. They had seen what happened to their greatest fleet and wanted no part of a war with humanity. "What should we tell them?" asked Secretary of Defense Williams during an emergency cabinet meeting. President Martinez looked around the table at his advisors. These were smart people who had spent their careers planning for humanity's gradual integration into galactic society. None of them had planned for this scenario. "Tell them our terms are simple," he said. "Complete surrender, immediate release of all prisoners, full reparations to their victims, and total disarmament. If they refuse, they can ask Admiral Chen to explain the consequences." Within hours, all 17 Korvac systems had accepted the terms unconditionally. The galactic balance of power had shifted permanently. Species that had dominated local space for thousands of years were suddenly looking over their shoulders, wondering if Earth approved of their actions. Pirates and raiders who had terrorized trade routes for decades began surrendering to local authorities rather than risk encountering human patrol ships. Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the Yamamoto, looking out at the debris field. That had once been the most feared fleet in the galaxy. Her aide, Lieutenant Rodriguez, approached with the latest reports. "Admiral, we are receiving surrender requests from 43 different star systems. Most of them are offering tribute and asking for protection from their enemies. What are your orders?" Chen turned away from the window and looked at the young officer. "Send them our standard response, Lieutenant. Tell them that Earth does not want tribute or slaves or territory. We want them to treat their people fairly and to stop attacking their neighbors. If they can do that, we will protect them from anyone who tries to hurt them. And if they refuse..." Admiral Chen gestured toward the debris field floating outside. "Show them this recording and ask them if they would like to reconsider their position." Lieutenant Rodriguez smiled.
Yes, Admiral. I think they will see reason.
As the human fleet prepared to return to Earth, Captain Veltara sent one final message to Admiral Chen. It was broadcast on all frequencies so that every species in the galaxy could hear it. "Admiral Chen and the brave people of Earth, she said you came to our aid when no one else would. You risked everything to save people you had never met. You fought the most powerful empire in the galaxy and won, not for conquest or glory, but because it was the right thing to do. The Zephyrian Republic will never forget what you have done for us. We pledge that as long as we exist. Earth will have loyal friends among the stars." The message was heard on 1,000 worlds by 1 billion different beings. It became the most famous transmission in galactic history, and it established a truth that would reshape interstellar politics. For generations to come, humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and the galaxy would never be the same again as the human fleet jumped back into hyperspace. Heading home to the small blue world that had given birth to the most dangerous species in the galaxy? One thought echoed through the minds of every end. Being who had witnessed the battle, never again would anyone make the mistake of underestimating the humans from Earth.